The great council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive ring of metal and light orbiting a neutron star. Inside, representatives from 40 different species gathered to discuss matters of the galaxy. This was the Galactic Concilium, the place where the powerful decided the fate of billions. Consul Vexith Kor stood at the center platform, his tall frame covered in the traditional purple robes of his office. His species, the Talarians, had been exploring space for over 10,000 years. They were respected, feared, and very proud of their achievements. Vexith himself had served the Concilium for 3 centuries. He had seen many things, solved many problems, and he believed there was nothing in the galaxy that could surprise him anymore. The chamber doors opened with a soft hiss. A human woman walked in, her steps echoing in the vast space. Her name was Dr. Sarah Chen, and she was Earth's ambassador to the Concilium. She carried a data tablet in her hands and wore the simple gray uniform of Earth's diplomatic service. Behind her walked 2 other humans, both carrying equipment cases. Vexith tried not to show his annoyance. Humans were still newcomers to galactic society. They had only been traveling between stars for 400 years, which seemed like a long time to them but was nothing compared to the ancient species of the Concilium. Their technology was basic, their ships were slow, and their understanding of the universe was limited. Vexith had always been polite to them, but he did not take them seriously. "Ambassador Chen," Vexith said, his voice carrying through the chamber. "This is unexpected. You did not schedule this meeting through proper channels." Sarah stopped at the base of the platform and looked up at him. Her face was tired and there were dark circles under her eyes. "Consul, I apologize for the breach of protocol, but this cannot wait. We have discovered something dangerous and the Concilium needs to know immediately." Vexith gestured for her to continue, though several other council members were already whispering among themselves. An emergency presentation from Earth? This would probably be amusing. Sarah activated her tablet and a holographic display appeared above her head. It showed a section of space near the outer rim of the galaxy, close to what humans called the Andromeda Veil. The image zoomed in on a swirling mass of distorted space, colored in reds and purples by the scanning equipment. 3 months ago, Earth's survey ship Magellan detected an unusual spatial anomaly in Sector 447 Alpha, Sarah began. "We sent 2 more ships to investigate. All 3 vessels are gone. They entered the anomaly and never came out. We also sent 12 automated probes, all destroyed or lost." She changed the image, showing data streams and mathematical equations. "Our analysis shows that this anomaly is unlike anything in our databases. Space itself is folded in ways that should not be possible. Energy readings spike and then vanish. And there is something else." The image changed again, showing wave patterns that looked wrong, somehow twisted and broken. "We are detecting what might be a signal coming from inside. Our computers cannot translate it, but our linguists believe it might be a warning, a very old warning." Vexith leaned forward slightly. "Ambassador, space is full of anomalies. Black holes, quantum storms, dimensional rifts. Your species has limited experience with such phenomena. What makes you think this particular anomaly is dangerous?" "Because of what happened to our ships, Consul," Sarah said firmly. "They did not explode. They did not send distress signals. They simply ceased to exist the moment they crossed the boundary. Complete and instantaneous communication loss. We have never seen anything like it." Another council member, a insect-like being named Chitrix, made a clicking sound that translated as laughter. "Perhaps your communication technology is simply inadequate. The Concilium has equipment far more advanced than Earth's." Sarah's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice level. "With respect, Council Member Chitrix, we considered that possibility. That is why we waited 3 months, scanning constantly with every piece of equipment we have. Nothing comes out of that anomaly. Nothing." Vexith stood and walked down from his platform, his robes flowing behind him. He approached Sarah and looked at the holographic display with an expression of mild interest. "So what is it that you want the Concilium to do, Ambassador?" "Declare this region forbidden space," Sarah said immediately. "Establish a quarantine perimeter. Do not let anyone approach it until we understand what it is." The chamber erupted in conversation. Several council members laughed openly. Others looked confused. Vexith raised his hand and silence fell. "You are asking the Concilium to close off an entire sector of space because Earth lost a few ships?" Vexith said, his tone making it clear how ridiculous he found the idea. "Ambassador, humanity is young. Your people see danger everywhere because you do not understand the universe yet. What you are describing sounds like a natural phenomenon. Unusual, perhaps, but nothing that requires such extreme action. Sarah's face flushed with anger. Consul, with all due respect, I am not some frightened child seeing monsters in the dark. I am a scientist. I have spent 30 years studying spatial anomalies. And I am telling you that this is different. This is wrong. Please just listen to the data. I have listened, Vexith said dismissively. He turned to address the full council. The Consilium thanks Earth for bringing this matter to our attention. We will of course investigate this anomaly properly, with advanced equipment and experienced personnel. If it proves to be dangerous, we will take appropriate action. He looked back at Sarah. But we will not shut down an entire region of space based on human superstition. The galaxy cannot stop every time a junior species encounters something it does not understand. Sarah's two assistants looked at each other nervously. One of them, a young man named David, leaned forward and whispered urgently to Sarah. She shook her head slightly, then turned back to Vexith. Consul, I have one more piece of information. We found something in our archives. Fragments of text from the progenitor civilization. The translation is rough, but it mentions this region of space. It says to stay away. It says something is sealed there. This got Vexith's attention, though he tried not to show it. The progenitors were the legendary first civilization, the species that had supposedly traveled the galaxy 50,000 years before any current species had even discovered fire. Most people thought they were myths. But occasionally artifacts were found that suggested they had been real. You have progenitor texts? Vexith asked, unable to keep the skepticism from his voice. Fragments, Sarah admitted. Found on Mars, buried under ancient ice. We have been trying to translate them for decades. Most of it is still unclear. But this part was specific. It marked this region of space and said it must not be disturbed. Vexith studied her face for a long moment, then shook his head. Even if these texts are genuine, they are 50,000 years old. The galaxy has changed. What might have been dangerous to the progenitors may be perfectly safe now. Or it may be nothing at all. He gestured to one of his aides. Prepare a science fleet. 40 vessels, full sensor arrays, military escort. We will investigate this anomaly and determine exactly what it is. Then we will show Ambassador Chen and her people how proper galactic exploration is done. Sarah's face went pale. Consul, please, do not send ships into that anomaly. I am begging you. Your concern is noted, Ambassador, Vexith said coldly. This meeting is concluded. Sarah stood there for a moment, looking like she wanted to say more. Then her shoulders slumped in defeat and she turned to leave. Her assistants gathered their equipment and followed her out of the chamber. As the doors closed behind them, Vexith heard one council member say to another, Humans, always so dramatic. 3 days later, the Consilium science fleet assembled at the edge of Sector 447 Alpha. 47 ships, the finest research vessels in the galaxy, equipped with technology that would make Earth's equipment look like children's toys. The fleet commander, a veteran explorer named Sithrax, transmitted a confident message back to the Consilium headquarters. Beginning approach to anomaly. All systems optimal. Will report findings in 6 hours. Vexith watched the transmission from his office, satisfied. This would prove once and for all that humans worried too much. The fleet would study the anomaly, explain its natural properties, and everyone could move on. The fleet crossed the boundary of the anomaly. Every screen went dark. Every signal stopped. 47 ships, 2,000 crew members gone in an instant. Vexith stared at the blank monitors, his confidence crumbling. In her quarters on Earth's orbital station, Sarah Chen received the news. She closed her eyes and whispered to the darkness. I tried to warn them. The chamber remained silent for a long time. 2 weeks passed with no word from the science fleet. The silence was complete and terrifying. The Consilium sent signals on every frequency, used every type of communication they possessed, but nothing came back from the Andromeda Veil. It was as if the 47 ships had simply ceased to exist. The chamber filled with representatives again, but this time the mood was different. Fear had replaced the earlier confidence. Vexith sat in his chair, looking older than he had just weeks before. He had not slept well since the fleet disappeared. Every night he saw Sarah Chen's face in his dreams, heard her voice saying, I tried to warn them. Admiral Korath stood at the center platform, a massive Kryn warrior covered in ceremonial armor. The Kryn were one of the most powerful military species in the galaxy. Their ships feared across hundreds of systems. Korath had commanded fleets in 3 major wars and had never lost a battle. "The science fleet is gone," Korath said, his deep voice echoing through the chamber, "but we do not know if they were destroyed or simply unable to communicate. I propose a military recovery operation. 200 warships, heavy weapons, the best shields in the galaxy. We go in, we find our people, and we bring them home." Many council members nodded in agreement. This made sense to them. They were used to solving problems with force and technology. A mysterious anomaly could not stand against the might of the Consilium's military. The chamber doors opened. Sarah Chen walked in again, and this time she was not alone. Behind her came a man in the dark blue uniform of Earth's Defense Force. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with gray hair and a face marked by old scars. His name was Captain Marcus Webb, and he moved with the careful precision of a lifelong soldier. "Consul," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the discussions, "please do not send that fleet." Vexith looked at her with tired eyes. "Ambassador Chen, I suppose you have come to say that you warned us." "No," Sarah said quietly. "I came to beg you not to make the same mistake twice. That anomaly has already taken 47 ships. Sending more will not change anything." Admiral Korath turned to face her, his alien features arranged in what might have been a sneer. "With respect, Ambassador, your species lost 3 small survey ships. We lost a science fleet because we were unprepared. A military fleet is different. We have weapons that can tear through dimensions, shields that can withstand the heart of a star. Whatever is in that anomaly will not stand against Kryn warships." Marcus Webb stepped forward. His voice was rough, like gravel scraping metal. "I knew the crew of the Magellan, Admiral. Good people, smart people. They were not unprepared. They were careful. They sent probes first, analyzed the data, approached slowly, and they still vanished. Human ships are primitive," Korath said dismissively. "No offense intended, Captain, but your technology is centuries behind ours." "None taken," Marcus said evenly. "But being primitive sometimes means being careful. We know we are not the strongest, so we look before we jump." Vexith raised his hand for silence. "Ambassador Chen, what exactly do you know about this anomaly? You mentioned progenitor texts. What else have you found?" Sarah activated her tablet again. The holographic display showed ancient symbols, rough translations beside them. "We have been working on these fragments since you sent the science fleet. The translation is getting clearer. The progenitors did not just mark this region as dangerous, Consul. They specifically sealed something inside it." She changed the image, showing a rough diagram that looked like a cage or prison. "This symbol keeps appearing in the texts. Our linguists believe it means containment or binding. The progenitors built something there, something meant to hold something else in." Chitrix clicked his mandibles nervously. "Hold what in? What could be dangerous enough that the progenitors needed to imprison it?" "We do not know," Sarah admitted. "The texts are incomplete. But there is one word that appears over and over." She highlighted a symbol that looked like a spiral eating itself. "Our best translation is hunger or consumer, something that eats. Or consumes." "This is speculation," Vexith said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Ancient warnings from a civilization that might never have existed. We need facts, not ghost stories." "Then let me give you facts," Sarah said sharply. "Fact 1, 3 human ships are gone. Fact 2, 47 Consilium ships are gone. Fact 3, nothing that enters that anomaly has ever come out. How many more facts do you need, Consul?" The chamber fell silent. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Admiral Korath broke the silence. "Even if the ambassador is correct, even if something dangerous is inside that anomaly, we cannot simply abandon our people. 2,000 crew members might still be alive in there. I will not leave them." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "I understand, Admiral. I truly do. But sending more people into that anomaly will not save the ones already lost. It will only add to the number of missing." Vexith stood slowly. He looked around the chamber, seeing the fear and uncertainty on every face. He had been a consul for 3 centuries. He had made thousands of decisions, led the Consilium through difficult times, but he had never felt more unsure than he did at this moment. Part of him knew that Sarah was right. Every instinct he had developed over his long life was screaming at him to stop, to listen, to be careful. But another part of him, The proud part that had dismissed her warnings before could not accept that a junior species had been right when he had been wrong. "Admiral Korath," Vexith said finally, "you will take your recovery fleet and investigate the anomaly. But you will proceed with extreme caution. Send probes first. If you detect any danger, you will withdraw immediately. Do you understand?" Korath saluted sharply. "Understood, Consul." Sarah closed her eyes briefly, her face showing defeat. "Then at least let us help. Earth has been studying this anomaly longer than anyone. We can share our data, help you prepare." "That will not be necessary," Vexith said stiffly. Then he paused and added in a softer voice, "But thank you for the offer, Ambassador." Sarah and Marcus left the chamber without another word. As they walked through the corridors of the station, Marcus spoke quietly. "They are going to lose that fleet too, you know." "I know," Sarah said. "But maybe some of them will come back. Maybe Korath will be careful enough. And if he is not?" Sarah did not answer. The recovery fleet assembled over the next 3 days. 200 warships, the pride of a dozen different species. The Kryn provided heavy battle cruisers. The Talarians sent their finest sensor ships. Even the mysterious Zenthral, who rarely involved themselves in concilium affairs, contributed 3 of their reality-anchoring vessels. Vexith watched the fleet depart from his office, surrounded by monitors showing different views. He had not told anyone, but he had arranged for Earth to receive all the sensor data in real time. If something went wrong, at least the humans would have information to study. Admiral Korath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Unbreakable Will. Around him, his crew worked with practiced efficiency. They had fought pirates, battled hostile aliens, survived encounters with quantum storms. This would be just another challenge to overcome. The fleet approached the boundary of the anomaly slowly. Korath ordered probe after probe sent ahead. Most of them stopped transmitting the moment they crossed the boundary. A few sent back garbled data before going silent. "Energy readings are spiking," his sensor officer reported. "The anomaly is reacting to our presence." Korath studied the displays, his experienced eyes looking for patterns. The anomaly was large, much larger than initial reports had suggested. It looked like a wound in space itself, edges rippling and bleeding impossible colors. "All ships maintain formation," Korath commanded. "We cross together on my mark. Keep shields at maximum. Weapons ready." Marcus Webb watched the same sensor data from Earth's orbital station. He had managed to convince his superiors to let him monitor the concilium feed. Next to him, Sarah sat silently, her hands gripped together. "They are going in," Marcus said quietly. On the display, they watched as 200 warships crossed the boundary of the anomaly. For 3 seconds, the signals continued. The sensors showed the fleet entering a space that should not exist, where the laws of physics bent in strange directions. Then, just like before, everything stopped. Every signal died. Every ship vanished from the sensors. 200 warships. 15,000 crew members. Gone. Sarah made a small sound, something between a sob and a gasp. Marcus put a hand on her shoulder but said nothing. What was there to say? Back on the concilium station, Vexith stared at the blank monitors. Around him, alarms were sounding as systems registered the loss of the entire fleet. Aides rushed in and out, their voices urgent and panicked, but Vexith barely heard them. He was thinking about Sarah Chen's face when she had begged him not to send the fleet. He was thinking about all the warnings he had ignored because he thought humans were too primitive to understand the galaxy. His personal communication panel lit up. It was a priority message from the Talarian homeworld. The government wanted answers. The families of the lost crew members wanted answers. The entire concilium wanted answers. Vexith had none to give. In the corridor outside the chamber, someone spray-painted words on the wall in angry, dripping letters. The human was right. The concilium chamber was in chaos. Representatives shouted at each other across the vast space, accusations flying like weapons. Some blamed Vexith for not listening to Earth's warning. Others blamed Earth itself, suggesting that humans had somehow caused this disaster. A few whispered about ancient curses and supernatural forces. Vexith sat in his chair, watching the madness unfold. He had aged 10 years in the past week. His once proud bearing had crumbled into exhaustion. He knew that calls for his resignation were growing louder each day. He knew that some wanted him arrested, tried for the deaths of thousands. He probably deserved it. A Talarian military officer approached his platform, moving through the arguing crowd. "Consul, we have an urgent situation developing." Vexith looked up, almost grateful for something concrete to focus on. "What now?" "The Kryn government is assembling a war fleet. They blame the Zenthral for sabotaging the recovery mission. The Zenthral are accusing the Talarians of incompetence. 3 minor species have declared that they are leaving the Concilium entirely. And the humans—" The officer paused. "What about the humans?" Vexith asked. "They have declared the entire sector around the anomaly to be quarantine space. They have moved 50 ships to form a perimeter and are turning away all vessels, regardless of species or reason. They say they will use force if necessary to keep anyone from approaching the anomaly." Vexith closed his eyes. Of course, the humans were doing what he should have done weeks ago. Let them maintain the quarantine. At least someone is showing sense. The chamber suddenly fell silent. Vexith opened his eyes and saw everyone staring at the central display. A priority alert was flashing red. "What is it?" he demanded. The display showed a tracking plot of the space around the anomaly. A single object had emerged from the boundary, moving slowly. It was small, roughly the size of an escape pod. "All ships fall back," someone was shouting over the communication channels. "Unknown object emerging from the anomaly." Vexith stood, his heart pounding. Something was coming out. After all this time, something was finally coming out. On Earth's quarantine line, Marcus Webb watched the same plot on his tactical display. His ship, the Vigilant, was the closest vessel to the emerging object. "What is it?" his tactical officer asked, her voice tense. "Getting a reading now," the sensor operator replied. "It is an escape pod. Talarian design, heavily damaged. Life signs detected, but weak." Marcus leaned forward. "Can we identify which ship it came from?" "Running the signature now." "It is from the recovery fleet, sir. The flagship. Admiral Korath's vessel." The bridge fell silent. Someone had survived. After 200 ships vanished completely, someone had actually made it out. "Bring it in," Marcus ordered. "Carefully. Full decontamination procedures. Medical team standing by." Sarah Chen arrived at the Vigilance docking bay just as the escape pod was being brought in. She had taken a fast shuttle from the research station where she had been working. Her face was pale but determined. "Is there really someone alive in there?" she asked Marcus. "The sensors say yes," Marcus replied. "But we do not know what condition they will be in." The pod was scorched black, its hull twisted and torn in places that suggested it had been through something terrible. As the docking clamp secured it, Marcus and Sarah moved to the medical bay where the survivor would be taken. The pod's emergency hatch opened with a groan of tortured metal. Medical personnel rushed in, and moments later they emerged carrying a stretcher. On it lay a Talarian, wearing the torn remains of a military uniform. His eyes were wide open, staring at nothing, and his lips moved constantly, though no sound came out. The chief medical officer, a stern woman named Dr. Reeves, scanned the survivor with her equipment. "He is alive, but barely. Extreme trauma, both physical and psychological. I have never seen readings like this. His neural patterns are completely scrambled." "Can he speak?" Sarah asked urgently. "I do not know. Let me stabilize him first." They worked on the survivor for 3 hours. Sarah and Marcus waited outside the medical bay, watching through the window. The Talarian's eyes never stopped moving, darting back and forth as if seeing things that were not there. Finally, Dr. Reeves emerged, pulling off her gloves. "He is stable, physically at least. But his mind, whatever he saw in there broke something fundamental. He keeps trying to speak, but most of it is incoherent." "But some of it is coherent?" Marcus pressed. "Some of it. He keeps repeating certain phrases. I recorded them." Dr. Reeves activated her tablet and a recording played. The Talarian's voice was hoarse and broken, barely more than a whisper. "Not empty. It is not empty. They said it was empty, but it is full. So full. They are awake. They are awake. Not supposed to wake up. The prison is breaking. We fed it. We fed the prison and now it is breaking." The recording dissolved into incomprehensible sounds, then returned to words. "Ships. All the ships. It ate them. No, not ate. Absorbed. Still there. Still alive. All of us still there. Still screaming. I can still hear them screaming." Sarah's hands shook as she gripped her tablet. "We need to analyze his escape pod's recordings. Every piece of data we can extract. The data from the pod's systems was fragmented and corrupted. but Earth's best technicians worked on it for 2 days straight. What they recovered changed everything. The concilium chamber was packed when Sarah presented her findings. Vexith had called an emergency session, and for once every representative was present and silent. Sarah stood at the center platform, her face grim. The escape pod's sensors recorded 17 seconds of data before Admiral Korath managed to launch it. That 17 seconds showed us what is inside the anomaly. The holographic display activated, showing distorted images that hurt to look at. Space itself seemed wrong in the footage, bent and folded in impossible ways, and in the center of it all was a structure. It was massive beyond comprehension, a geometric nightmare that seemed to exist in more dimensions than the eye could process. It was made of material that looked like crystallized starlight, covered in symbols that writhed and changed as they were observed. "This is a progenitor structure," Sarah said, her voice shaking slightly. "A containment facility, a prison. The anomaly is not a natural phenomenon. It is the prison's outer wall, a fold in space designed to keep something locked away from the rest of the universe." She changed the image, zooming in on one section of the structure. There, visible in the grainy footage, were the ships. Hundreds of them, embedded in the prison's walls like insects trapped in amber. They were intact but frozen, their hulls merged with the strange material of the prison itself. "The crews are still alive," Sarah said quietly. "The survivor was right. They are absorbed into the structure, conscious but unable to move or act. The prison is using their energy, their life force, to maintain itself." Horror rippled through the chamber. Thousands of people trapped alive in that thing, aware of their captivity but unable to escape. "What is it keeping imprisoned?" Vexith asked, his voice barely audible. Sarah changed the image one last time. At the very center of the structure, hidden in layers of containment fields and dimensional locks, was something else. The image was too distorted to make out clearly, but the impression it gave was of something vast and hungry, something that existed to consume. "The progenitors called it the Harvester," Sarah said. "Our translation of their texts is getting better. The Harvester is an intelligence, ancient even when the progenitors were young. It consumes entire species, absorbing their knowledge, their culture, their very essence. It feeds on life and energy." She looked around the chamber at the terrified faces. "The progenitors fought it 50,000 years ago. They could not destroy it, so they imprisoned it instead. They built this containment facility and sealed it in a fold of space, hidden away where no one would find it. They left warnings in every language they could think of, hoping future species would understand. But we did not understand," Chitrix said softly. "We thought we knew better." "The prison was designed to be self-sustaining," Sarah continued, "but it needed maintenance, periodic reinforcement. The progenitors left instructions, but they were lost over time. Without maintenance, the prison has been slowly weakening for thousands of years." She paused, letting the next words hang in the air. "Every ship we sent into the anomaly provided energy to the prison. It absorbed them, used their power to sustain itself. But in doing so, it destabilized the containment fields. The prison is failing. The Harvester is waking up." The chamber erupted in panic. Representatives shouted questions, demanded solutions, called for immediate action. But Sarah raised her voice above the chaos. "There is more. The sensors detected energy spikes at the edge of the containment field. Something is moving in there. The Harvester is testing the boundaries of its prison, and the pod's final transmission recorded this. The display showed a massive spike of energy at the anomaly's boundary, a pulse that sent waves through normal space, distorting sensors and causing physical matter to ripple. "That pulse was recorded 6 hours ago," Sarah said. "We detected another one 3 hours ago. They are getting stronger and more frequent. Our calculations suggest that within 2 weeks, maybe less, the prison will fail completely. When that happens, the Harvester will be free." The concilium was falling apart. In the week following Sarah's revelation about the Harvester, 3 species had formally withdrawn from the Alliance. 5 more had recalled their ambassadors. The Kryn and Talarians were on the brink of war, each blaming the other for the disaster. Pirates and opportunists were already raiding poorly defended systems, taking advantage of the chaos. Vexith no longer attended council sessions. He had been stripped of most of his authority, placed under investigation by a tribunal that spent more time arguing about who was responsible than actually trying to solve the problem. The concilium that had once ruled the galaxy with confidence now could not agree on anything. In his private quarters, Vexith sat alone in the darkness. He had not slept in 3 days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those ships embedded in the prison walls, their crews trapped and aware. 17,000 people suffering because of his pride. A soft chime announced a visitor at his door. Vexith almost ignored it, but the chime came again, more insistent. "Enter," he said, his voice rough. The door opened, and Sarah Chen walked in. She looked as tired as he felt. Dark circles under her eyes, her uniform rumpled as if she had been wearing it for days. "Ambassador," Vexith said, not bothering to stand. "Have you come to see the fallen consul? To witness the price of arrogance?" Sarah pulled up a chair and sat across from him. "I came to offer help," Vexith laughed bitterly. "Help? What help can anyone offer now? The harvester is waking up. In less than 2 weeks it will break free and begin consuming the galaxy, and we have no way to stop it." "Earth might have a way," Sarah said quietly. Vexith looked up sharply. "What?" Sarah activated her tablet and a holographic display appeared between them. It showed technical schematics that Vexith did not recognize. Designs for ships and weapons that looked nothing like standard Consilium technology. When Earth first discovered the anomaly 2 centuries ago, "We did not just send those 3 survey ships," Sarah said. "We sent a larger expedition, a whole fleet. They encountered the prison just like our recent ships did, but one of them made it back, damaged but functional. The crew survived long enough to tell us what they found." Vexith leaned forward, studying the designs. "You have known about the harvester for 200 years?" "Yes, and we have been preparing for it ever since." Sarah changed the display, showing Earth itself, with markers indicating facilities scattered across the planet and throughout the Sol system. "We spent 2 centuries studying what little data we recovered. We found fragments of progenitor technology, learned how it worked. We built weapons specifically designed to fight something like the harvester." "Why did you not tell the Consilium?" Vexith demanded. Sarah's expression hardened. "We tried. 50 years ago, we presented our findings to the Council. We were laughed out of the chamber. Your predecessor told us that humans were seeing threats that did not exist, that we were wasting resources on fairy tales. So we stopped trying to convince you and just kept preparing." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "Humanity learned a long time ago, Consul, that sometimes we have to protect ourselves because no one else will. When we were confined to Earth, we nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times. When we finally reached the stars, we realized the universe was far more dangerous than we ever imagined. So we became careful, cautious, prepared." "What kind of weapons are you talking about?" Vexith asked, studying the schematics more closely. "Cold technology," Sarah said. "The harvester feeds on energy. It senses life and power, draws it in and consumes it. So we built ships and weapons that produce almost no energy signature. They are slow, inefficient by Consilium standards, and their weapons are low-powered. But they are invisible to something that hunts by sensing energy." She changed the display again, showing a strange device that looked like a mix between a bomb and a dimensional anchor. "We also developed weapons that can manipulate the same folded space that the prison uses. We call them collapse charges. They can destabilize the dimensional folds, either reinforcing them or causing them to collapse entirely." Vexith stood slowly, hope and shame warring in his chest. "How many ships do you have with this technology?" 50, Sarah said. "The entire suppression fleet. They have been training for 2 centuries, passing knowledge from one generation to the next. Their mission has always been singular. If the harvester ever wakes up, stop it. No matter the cost. 50 ships against something that destroyed the progenitor civilization," Vexith said. "It is not enough." "No," Sarah agreed. "But it is what we have, and we are willing to try." The next day, Captain Marcus Webb stood before what remained of the Consilium Council. The chamber was half empty now, with only those representatives who had not fled or been recalled home. But those who remained listened intently. Marcus had never been comfortable with politics or speeches. He was a soldier, most at home on a ship's bridge or in the field, but he knew how to speak plainly and honestly. And right now, that was what these people needed. "Earth is willing to take the suppression fleet into the anomaly," Marcus said. "We will attempt to reinforce the prison, or if that is impossible, destroy the harvester. Our technology is designed for this specific threat. We have a chance of success where conventional fleets do not." "What do you need from the Consilium?" asked a Zenthral representative, one of the few who had shown any real interest in helping. "Time and information," Marcus replied. We need you to maintain the quarantine. Keep any other ships from entering the anomaly. The more energy the prison absorbs, the faster it will fail. We also need every piece of data you have on the progenitors, their technology, anything that might help us understand how the prison works. And if you fail? Vexith asked. He was sitting in the back of the chamber, no longer on the central platform but still present. Marcus looked at him directly. If we fail, Consul, then you need to evacuate as many people as you can to the far side of the galaxy, and hope the harvester moves slowly, because nothing else will stop it. The chamber fell silent. Finally, the Zenthral representative spoke. The Zenthral will share all of our progenitor data with Earth, and we will maintain the quarantine line with you. One by one, the other species agreed. Even those who had been hostile to Earth, who had dismissed humanity as primitive, now accepted that the humans were their last hope. Over the next week, Earth's suppression fleet gathered at the quarantine line. The ships looked strange compared to standard Consilium vessels. They were dark, angular, covered in materials that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Their engines were quiet, their weapons subtle. They looked almost primitive, but Marcus knew that each one represented 2 centuries of focused preparation and development. Sarah came aboard the Perseverance, Marcus's flagship, to brief the crew. The ship was smaller than a standard Consilium battleship, and its interior was cramped and utilitarian. But everyone Marcus saw moved with purpose and confidence. These were people who had trained their entire lives for this moment. We have managed to translate more of the progenitor texts, Sarah told the assembled officers. The prison has 3 main control nodes positioned around the central containment field. If we can reach these nodes, we might be able to reinforce the prison structure. Alternatively, if we can overload all 3 simultaneously, we might be able to collapse the entire dimensional fold in on itself. Trapping the harvester and destroying the prison, Marcus said, understanding, and trapping us inside with it. Yes, Sarah said quietly. The collapse charges are one-way weapons. Once they are activated, the fold will seal completely. Nothing gets out. A young officer, barely out of training, raised his hand. Ma'am, are you saying this is a suicide mission? Sarah looked at Marcus, who nodded slightly. She turned back to the young officer and met his eyes. Yes, I am saying exactly that. Once you enter the anomaly, you probably will not be coming back. We know this. The Consilium knows this. But if you succeed, you will save trillions of lives across the galaxy. She paused, then added, any member of this fleet who wants to stand down can do so with no shame or consequences. You will be reassigned to the quarantine line. This is voluntary. The chamber fell silent as Sarah waited. Marcus watched his crew, wondering how many would leave. This was not a battle they had signed up for. It was the end. Not a single person moved. The young officer who had asked the question spoke up again. Ma'am, with respect, we have been training for this our whole lives. Our parents trained for it. Our grandparents trained for it. 5 generations of humans have kept watch over that anomaly, knowing this day might come. We are not backing out now. Around the room, heads nodded in agreement. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest. Pride, yes, but also sadness. These were good people, all of them. They deserved to go home after this. But he knew most of them would not. Vexith watched the fleet prepare from the observation deck of the quarantine station. He had no official authority anymore, but no one had stopped him from coming. Maybe they understood that he needed to see this, needed to witness what his failure had led to. Sarah found him there the night before the fleet was scheduled to enter the anomaly. They stood together in silence for a while, watching the dark ships move through space like shadows. The space inside the anomaly was wrong in ways that defied description. Marcus stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, watching displays that showed geometry that should not exist. Space folded in on itself here, creating layers of reality stacked like pages in a book. The ship's sensors struggled to make sense of what they were detecting, showing readings that changed moment by moment. All ships report status, Marcus ordered, his voice steady despite the strangeness surrounding them. One by one, his captains reported in. All 50 ships had made it through the boundary intact. Their cold technology was working. The prison's defenses were not reacting to their presence the way they had reacted to the Consilium fleets. There it is, his tactical officer breathed, pointing at the main display. The prison filled the center of the anomaly, a structure so massive that human minds struggled to comprehend its scale. It was made of crystalline material that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, covered in symbols that writhed and changed as Marcus watched. And embedded in its walls like insects trapped in amber were the ships. Hundreds of them, from dozens of different species caught and held by the prison's power. "I can detect life signs," the sensor operator reported, her voice shaking. "They are alive in there. All of them. Trapped but conscious." Marcus felt his stomach turn. 17,000 people aware of their captivity, unable to move or speak or do anything but exist in that frozen state. How long had they been aware? Days, weeks? In this place where time itself seemed flexible, it might have felt like years to them. "Focus on the mission," Marcus said, forcing his voice to remain calm. "Scan for the control nodes. We need to locate all three." The fleet spread out, moving slowly through the folded space. Marcus watched as his ships navigated around dimensional distortions and pockets of compressed reality. Every few minutes, another pulse of energy radiated from the prison's center, growing stronger each time. "The harvester is waking up faster than we calculated," his science officer reported. "The prison is destabilizing at an accelerating rate. We have less time than we thought." "How much less?" "Hours, sir. Maybe 6 at most." Marcus opened a channel to Sarah back at the quarantine line. Her face appeared on the screen, looking exhausted and worried. "We found the control nodes," Marcus reported. "But we have a problem. The prison is failing faster than expected. We need to make a decision now. Do we try to reinforce it or collapse it?" Sarah looked at something off-screen, reading data. "Captain, according to our analysis, reinforcing the prison would require power levels we cannot generate. Even if we sacrificed every ship you have, it would not be enough. The damage is too extensive." Marcus nodded slowly. He had expected that answer, but had hoped he was wrong. "Then we collapse it. We destroy the prison with the harvester inside." "And everyone trapped in the prison walls," Sarah said quietly. "Those 17,000 people. They will die too." The bridge fell silent. Every officer heard Sarah's words and understood what they meant. They had come here to save people, but now they would have to kill them to stop something worse. "Those people are already lost," Marcus said, his voice heavy. "The harvester is using them, feeding on them. When it breaks free, they will die anyway. At least this way their sacrifice will mean something." Sarah's image flickered as another energy pulse disrupted communications. "I understand, Captain. We will record your decision and make sure the families know that you did not make this choice lightly." Marcus cut the channel and turned to face his crew. "You all heard. We are going to set the collapse charges at each control node. Once all three are active, this entire dimensional fold will seal shut. The harvester, the prison, those trapped ships, and us. Everything will be locked in here forever." His tactical officer, a woman named Lieutenant Chen, who happened to be Sarah's niece, spoke up. "Sir, is there any chance of setting the charges and getting out before the collapse?" "No," Marcus said honestly. "The charges will trigger a chain reaction. We will have seconds at most. Not enough time to reach the boundary." Lieutenant Chen nodded, accepting her fate with the same calm professionalism as her aunt. "Then let us make sure we do this right, sir." The fleet split into 3 groups, each targeting one of the control nodes. Marcus took his group toward the nearest node, a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with stolen energy. As they approached, he could see the prison's defenses more clearly now. Tendrils of force reached out from the walls, searching for energy to consume. But the human ships, running cold and dark, slipped past them like ghosts. "Approaching Node 1, Marcus reported, preparing to deploy the first collapse charge. A specially modified ship moved forward, carrying the collapse charge in reinforced containment. The weapon was strange-looking, more like a scientific instrument than a bomb. But Marcus knew its power. When activated, it would tear open the dimensional folds that held this space together. As his ships positioned themselves, Marcus noticed something at the edge of his sensors. Movement deep within the prison structure. Something vast was stirring in the center, responding to their presence. "All ships, the harvester is aware of us," Marcus warned. "Deploy charges quickly." The prison suddenly came alive. The walls rippled and shifted, and the tendrils of force that had been moving slowly now whipped through space with terrible speed. One of them caught a human ship, the Steadfast, before it could evade. Marcus watched in horror as the tendril touched the ship's hull. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship began to change, its metal hull flowing like liquid merging with the prison structure. The crew's final transmission was a scream that lasted only seconds before being cut off. "Node 1 charge deployed," Lieutenant Chen reported, her voice tight with grief. Moving to safe distance. Node 2 reporting. Came a transmission from Commander Park's group. Charge deployed. We lost 2 ships to the prison's defenses. Node 3, Captain Williams reported. Charge in position, but... Captain, you need to see this. Marcus switched his display to Williams's feed. The image showed the center of the prison, and for the first time they could see the harvester itself. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. A being of pure energy and thought vast beyond measure, shaped like a spiral that turned in on itself forever. Around it, Marcus could see fragments of the species it had consumed over millions of years. Knowledge, memories, entire civilizations reduced to food for this ancient intelligence, and it was looking at them. Marcus felt something touch his mind, a presence so alien and vast that it made him feel like an insect trying to understand a storm. The harvester was aware of them, aware of what they planned to do, and it was amused. In that moment, Marcus understood that it did not fear them. How could it? It had destroyed civilizations that made the current galaxy look primitive, but it had made one mistake. It had underestimated how stubborn humans could be when they decided something needed to be done. All charges deployed, Marcus announced. Activating in 30 seconds. Captain, Lieutenant Chen said urgently.
Sensors are detecting massive energy spikes throughout the prison.
The harvester is trying to break free right now. It knows what we are doing. The entire structure began to shake. The ships embedded in the wall started to crack and break apart as the harvester drew more power from them. The remaining crew members, frozen for so long, died by the thousands as their life energy was consumed. 15 seconds, Marcus counted down. The harvester's presence filled the anomaly. Marcus could feel it pushing against his mind, trying to communicate or perhaps to consume him. He saw images flash through his thoughts, worlds burning, species screaming, the progenitors fighting desperately against an enemy they could not defeat. 10 seconds. One of the control nodes exploded, destroyed by the harvester's attack. The prison structure began to tear, dimensional walls coming apart. Node 1 is gone, someone shouted. We need all 3 for the collapse. 5 seconds. Marcus made a decision that he had known he might have to make. He pointed the Perseverance toward the destroyed control node and pushed the engines to maximum. If one charge would not work, then he would provide the energy needed himself. All ships get as far from Node 1 as you can, Marcus ordered. We are going to replace the charge. Sir, Lieutenant Chen protested. That is an order, Lieutenant. Tell your aunt. Tell her that we kept watch. Marcus shut down every system on the Perseverance except for propulsion and guidance. He flew directly into the heart of the prison structure, toward the place where the control node had been. Around him, reality was coming apart. He could see the harvester more clearly now, could feel its hunger and anger. Detonating remaining charges in 3, 2, 1. The universe folded. On the quarantine line, Sarah Chen stood frozen as she watched the sensor displays. The anomaly had suddenly collapsed in on itself, compressing into a point of space so small it barely existed. Then it expanded outward in a wave of distorted energy that made every sensor in the fleet scream warnings. When the wave passed, the anomaly was gone. In its place was empty space, calm and normal, as if nothing had ever been there. Every ship, every signal, every trace of the dimensional fold had vanished. The prison, the harvester, and the suppression fleet were gone,